years old, my husband's parents, grandparents, we know where we are going. So the odds are, if you live a long life, you're going to encounter some hearing loss, and that's aggravated by noise exposure. Any veterans in the room? Yes, noise exposure will do this. Noise exposure, all kinds of causes. So here's my first joke. It's General Half-Track saying, "Doc, I'm having trouble hearing." And the doctor asks, "How old are you?" And he says, "I'm 67, and the doctor thinks he's heard enough." Obviously, this is a very old joke, because 67 isn't old anymore in my eyes, you know? So, and contrary to what people think, hearing loss starts to happen in our late 30s, 40s, and 50s, but it becomes a problem and very apparent as we start entering our retirement years, unfortunately. But you can see right here, the majority of people with hearing loss say it started before they were 60 years old. And I'm sure if you've attended the lectures from Tony, you have read about how hearing loss can contribute to an increase in falls, in irritability. Anybody live with somebody who's hard of hearing in the room here? You know, you're just less alert. Think about driving. You have to hear well in order to drive. Yes, and recently it's been related to an accelerated rate in cognitive decline. Now, just because you have hearing loss doesn't mean it's going to affect your cognition, but the odds are that if you have hearing loss, it is a contributing factor. And of course, this leads to some very interesting advertising. The hearing industry has jumped on this pretty quickly. I'm just going to move this. And now we see lots of ads, suggesting, what did I do there? Suggesting that you ought to have your hearing checked, or otherwise you're going to end up with cognitive decline. In my opinion, this is not appropriate advertising. But we also know that only 1 out of 4 people with hearing loss uses hearing aids. Of course, the 3 out of 4 who don't wear hearing aids use hearing aids all right. They have a hearing wife, they have a hearing husband, they have a hearing dog, they turn up the TV and they say, huh, and what? A lot, hoping that people will, repeat what they just said, but in a louder tone. So, no, don't think that they are not availing themselves of some form of hearing aid. So let's talk a little bit about hearing loss, because I know Tony wanted me to talk about hearing loops, but I'm not going to talk about hearing loops until you have a better understanding of what hearing loss is all about, what hearing aids can and cannot do, what kind of effective technology is out there to help you hear in places where hearing aids are unable to deliver, and then we'll get into hearing loops. So it's a pretty ambitious program. Oh, and someone is, Anne, right? She is holding up loop listening devices, and I don't care if you don't think you have hearing trouble. I want you to pick up one of these devices and try one. Just put one on, because it's tied in directly to the PA system. And obviously, the reason this guy is having trouble is because he didn't get an ear. So hearing loss, and I'm simplifying this to some extent, there are 3 components to hearing loss. The first one is the simplest one to understand. It's audibility. It's hearing. And how many of you have had a hearing test? And what does the audiologist ask you to do when you hear a beep? Press the button before, and so when you think, whoa, hear that very soft beep. But the truth is the audiologist had to turn it up louder than quote unquote normal. That test is shown in units of decibel, and it is basically a recording of your hearing ability, usually of hearing soft and intermediately loud sounds. And if you have a normal ear, the inner ear can function normally by transmitting signals up to the brain so that when the audiologist gives a beep, you actually press the button because you heard it happen. But the second component is the distortion component. And that is where the audiologist gives you a speech test. Say the word bad. Say the word fit. You know, and fit sounds like sit, and it sounds like something else too. So you can have a hearing loss, and you can have no trouble with distortion. You are hearing all the words perfectly, but frequently, no matter how loud the sound is made, you're going to have trouble distinguishing what was said. Audiologists measure this in percentage speech understanding. Okay? And this distortion is happening in the inner ear, and let me show you an inner ear, I believe of a chinchilla, but you can imagine what could have happened during World War II when people were continuously exposed to loud noise blasts. This is an inner ear that was exposed to loud noise, and there is no way that this ear can transmit all the speech signals clearly up to the brain. On top of that, as we get older, and I am in that department, anybody in the room who speaks English as a second language? I'm in the same boat. So I moved here from the Netherlands, and believe it or not, we are a very special group in the sense that we may not have any hearing trouble, but we do have more trouble understanding speech, for example, when there's background of noise, when people speak fast, or when people present with accents that are not your own. All right? So there's audibility, and you can imagine a tiny little picture. You're not supposed to be able to read that in the back of the room, but I can make it bigger. Okay? So if you have a loss of audibility, making things louder will allow you to hear better. But if you have a lot of distortion in the ear, this little picture is hard to see from the back. I'll make it bigger. I'll make it bigger. And making bigger doesn't help. Okay? And a lot of you are in this situation. Turning up your hearing aid isn't going to improve the clarity, unfortunately. So the third component, so there's audibility, distortion, and the third component is disproportionate amount of trouble in background of noise. So you do okay one-on-one, face-to-face, when you're with your favorite daughter-in-law who speaks nice and loud and clear, but you go to a restaurant with her and you just, you can't hear her across the table. And it appears to be disproportionate because one-on-one you do okay, right? That test is measured with a SIN test. It has nothing to do with sinning. It has everything to do with speech in noise testing. And why is that important? It's because not everybody with the same degree of hearing loss functions at the same level in background of noise. By the way, that ability to understand speech in noise cannot be measured by an audiogram. It needs to be verified with a speech in noise test. And just like you should know your average hearing loss, your average speech discrimination, you really ought to know your ability to discern speech in background of noise. And it's a pretty technical subject, but imagine going into a restaurant and there's a certain amount of noise. The speech in noise test measures how loud the speech has to be over and above the noise for you to understand 50%. Now, 50% isn't normal, but if for a lot of people, when they hear 50%, they can kind of fill in the rest. They can look at people, they can speech read, and they can just kind of fill in. Doesn't mean it's easy, but they can manage. Typical hearing adults can hear okay when the speech is only 2 decibels louder than the background noise. Your grandkids, by the way, or great-grandkids, I don't know where you're at, probably can hear at negative numbers. They can go into a bar and they can understand what people are saying a couple of feet away, even though the background noise is louder than the voices that they're talking to. Their brain is capable of doing that. As we age, that ability decreases. As we have more hearing loss, that ability decreases. So some PWHL, people with hearing loss, may need speech to be 10 decibels louder, or 12, or 15, okay? In order to understand 50%. And you need to know that a lot of hearing aids can only improve your ability in background of noise on average about 5 dB. Everybody with me? If you need 10 and your hearing aids are only delivering 5, you are still drowning in background noise. You also need to know that this is frequently not a hearing aid technology issue. I'll give you 2 examples. In my office, I have Jason and I have Hazel. Anybody have an Aunt Hazel in the family? Aunt Dorothy and Dolores, they're all in their early 90s, by the way. Jason, he can hear speech, he has hearing loss, 70 decibels of hearing loss, but as long as I make it louder, Jason hears just as well as I do in background of noise. But Hazel needs the speech to be 15 decibels louder in order to make out the speech from the background noise, and she really struggles. So who's going to do better with hearing aids? Hazel or Jason? Jason, right? You get that. But they have the same degree of hearing loss. So there's a big difference in how people perform. Are you normal hearing? I'm going to look at you. Or you wear hearing aids also? Aha. Okay. Anybody who's normal hearing in the room? Okay. Because frequently people with normal hearing get a little impatient with people who have hearing trouble, right? Understood. But you don't get impatient with people who have trouble walking. You open the door. Let me help. Let me carry that bag for you. Here, I'll drive up the car and then I'll pick you up. But we don't extend that same courtesy frequently to people who have trouble hearing. We get kind of a little irritated, a little, I have to repeat it again, right? And you can see it in their face. So in the end, some people with hearing loss appear to hear effortlessly with hearing aids. Those are the Jasons of this world. And some people really struggle, and those are the Hazels of this world. And Hazel's daughter flew all the way from Brussels to fix her mother with new hearing aids. And this woman could talk faster than I could think, and was kind of frustrated with me that Mom couldn't hear any better with those brand new hearing aids. And, you know, I thought I had explained things pretty clearly as we are having this conversation, as I'm fitting the hearing aids to Mom. But the daughter fully expected that these new hearing aids, replacing 9 or 10-year-old hearing aids, were going to make mom hear like she did 20 years ago before her daughter went to Brussels. And that didn't happen, okay? So just to kind of show you, most people, when they lose their hearing, tend to lose their hearing in the high-pitched tones. Age, noise exposure, certain types of medication. But I'm going to explain what it is to have low-pitch hearing. When you lose your low-pitch hearing, which happens very infrequently, but it does happen, people have no trouble hearing the consonant sounds. It's not loud enough, but it's clear, okay? And everybody could make this out, right? That TV program was worth watching. But people who lose their high-pitch hearing hear something like this. I'll give you lots of time. I'm Dutch. Is that any clue? I love to grow tulips in my garden. But it got really quiet here for a moment. People with hearing loss are continuously trying to figure out what people are saying. They miss keywords. They get, I love to grow in my garden. And you didn't hear the part. And then you don't know if I'm talking about tulips or onions, right? So, then there's something else that affects our ability to hear. And that is reverberation. And there's a fair amount of this in this room. There's an echoing in this room. Reverberation tends to smear the quality of the sound, and I know that because I gave you a visual representation. That is why, if there is a lot of reverberation, like in these old stone cathedrals, what do the ministers do in those cathedrals? Speak slowly. Why? Because when you speak slower in a reverberant facility, you will hear each word twice, but at least you can kind of make out what I just said. So if you're in a facility where there's reverberation and people talk too fast, you're going to have a hard time, and it's tiring, it's stressful. And then there's something else that affects our ability to hear, and that's distance. Every time we double the distance, the volume drops by 6 decibels. So in a typical room, there is background noise. That's what that dotted line is about. And even though without a microphone I can talk pretty loud, that only works for the first few people, for the first few rows. And the people in the back are going to have trouble hearing me because the background noise tends to be louder than the speech they're trying to hear. And remember, they have trouble hearing in background of noise. So, what you've learned is that when you have nerve-type hearing loss, and 90% of people have nerve-type hearing loss, signals to the brain become less robust, more distorted, and the typical complaint, I can hear, can't understand. Exactly. And as soon as you're in background noise, it's worse. So I feel bad because I did this. I grew up with a father who was very hard of hearing, but only for the high-pitched tones. And in the Netherlands, we call that being East Indian deaf. It's not a nice comment, trust me on that. But in this country, they call it having selective hearing. So my mother would accuse my dad of only hearing what he wanted to hear. And why is that? Well, you know what my mother used to do? My mother learned this early on. She would go, say. Doesn't mean anything, by the way, but it means listen up. She who is important is about to speak. Say. And then my father would look up from his book or from his TV program and pay attention, right? So we accused my father of only hearing what he wanted to hear. But in reality, we gave him a chance to focus, pay attention. If you live with somebody who has trouble hearing, start your conversations with, this is a good one, honey. Sweetie works even better, all right? But something to get attention, because that person will now look up and will hear you, hopefully the first time around. Instead of saying, would you like another cup of coffee, hon? You say, honey, would you like another cup of coffee? And now the chances are pretty good he or she has heard you the first time around. So, and I suspect that the reason you're here is because you have trouble hearing, or maybe in certain situations, and this could be a whole lecture on its own, but for most people, we do a little analysis, audiologists, you know. Are you not hearing your wife because she has Parkinson? That's a totally different issue than if you're married to me and you can't hear me. All right, because I talk this loud all the time. Is it you? You know, are you tired? Are you struggling with depression? Are you having health issues that just make it harder to concentrate? And by the way, just another tip, you know, I'll just throw these in. If you live with somebody who has trouble hearing, don't start any heavy-duty conversations in the car. Because what can you not see if you are in the car? Exactly. So if it's your husband who has trouble hearing and you're sitting next to him, he needs his attention driving, folks. But, you know, is it listener-based? Yes. You know, he needs his attention driving the car. And is it the environment? Is it always the same restaurant where you go because it is noisy? And usually it's a combination of all three. You know, it's the speaker, it's the background noise, it could be you with your hearing loss. So just to show you that you're not the only one who doesn't understand some issues with hearing loss. Some of you may have seen this joke 4 years ago because I use it a lot. This is an American joke, unfortunately. It's a guy with a gun and a mask. It's a guy with a hearing aid. I'm sorry, I'm picking on you guys. And he's pushing his wife forward. Does everybody see that? And what does the wife say? He said, your money or your life, not your money or your wife. But you know, and I say this, what bugs me about this, what should she have said? Who's she blaming? Okay, so there's the robber. And she wants her husband to turn his hearing aids up. What's that gonna do? What's that gonna do for the sound? Does everybody get that? What should she have asked or said? Mr. Robber, my husband has trouble hearing. Would you mind taking off your mask? But no, she blames her husband. So to me, it's kind of a sad joke. But if the wife doesn't understand it, you know, how's the robber going to get it? So let's talk about some solutions. And I'm going to throw these out pretty quickly. But there are some, believe it or not, hard to believe, no-cost solutions. The easiest one is this. And I have an even better one. The problem is it's just really hard to eat and do that at the same time, you know, so that would not work for me. You can ask others to speak louder and repeat, or only socialize with people who have loud voices, you know. You could use a handheld amplifier, and I imagine Tony has what is called a pocket talker, like this. And actually, those can work wonders in high noise situations. They're not a costly option. You can even use your smartphone with an app and earbuds or earphones, or you could try an over-the-counter mail order hearing aid. The problem with these devices is that you are now also the expert. So you need to know what to do, how to use it, how to get it in your ear, how to keep it clean. But I've had clients who swore by them, but they ended up using them only at home, one-on-one, face-to-face, no background noise. So what if you need more than just 2 hands behind your ears? I brought a handout. This is a handout that I've helped develop. It's called Buying Hearing Aids in Wisconsin. But you can just cross off Wisconsin and put California, because just about everything applies except for the last paragraph on page 3. And I hope I brought enough of them with me, but otherwise I can email you a copy. So step number 1, you gotta find a good hearing care provider. And again, that could be a whole session, but there's plenty of people in the room here who are using hearing aids and who are familiar with audiologists. There is an audiologist in the back of the room. I lost her for a second. But this is an area where you need to do a little homework. And the first section of that handout is devoted to finding an audiologist. And here are some suggestions. Number 1, ask. Ask people who are happy, who are satisfied, who have used hearing aids for a period of time. Talk to satisfied hearing aid users. Now, remember, if the user you are talking to is very, very unhappy, it could be because this person is Hazel, right? And Hazel's hearing aids are going to deliver less for her than Jason's hearing aids. So Jason will talk very highly of his hearing aids, and Hazel's daughter thinks her mom's hearing aids stink. It's not the hearing aids, it's Hazel. Does everybody get that? Another solution, and I highly recommend this website, it's like a Yelp, but for hearing aids. It's called Hearing Tracker, all one word. It's quite a hearing loss support community where you can ask questions about technology. And then the third route is to go and find a support group. And you have an awesome resource person right here at your community in the form of Tony Berrient. So I'm not going to belabor that too much. Then you want to interview the provider. Do they adhere to the American Academy of Audiology best practices, or ASHA, American Speech Hearing Association best practices? And those are a set of professional procedures. In other words, do they meet those standards or exceed those standards? And there's all kinds of references here. If you're interested, I'm happy to forward them to you. Personally, and I'm very biased on that, I think you want to talk to providers who willingly provide references, okay? And providers who welcome, who in fact almost say, you can't come to my office unless you bring a second set of ears. 2 people hear more than one, all right? 2 people remember more than one. I'm in that department. I bring my husband for certain medical appointments. And, this audiologist literally ought to give you such a good feeling, because you are going to be spending a lot of time and over a long period of time with this audiologist. This is not I'm going to get myself a hearing aid and I'm done for the next 10 years relationship. Would you not agree? Yeah. So And then you want to talk to your hearing care provider, and what this audiologist is going to review with you at your first visit. That means your hearing health history. Are you a veteran? Have you done car racing? Have you done boat racing? Have you done any kind of use of power tools, what have you? The testing should include speech and noise testing. There should be an earwax exam, and lots of counseling on the results and clear recommendations. So, I mean, there's a lot to unpack, especially in that first or second appointment. And ideally, the provider creates a list of goals for you. What are the 3 or 4 things you want to accomplish with hearing aids? Why did you come into the office? What are your issues, right? It could be church, it could be grandkids, it could be TV, it could be you can't hear on the golf course. I mean, you know, there's a, generally audiologists pick 3 or 4 and work on those first. And then, oh my God, then the hard work starts. Now you got to choose a hearing aid. And there's lots to decide. And I cannot say enough about this article. It's Consumer Reports. It's the hearing aid buying guide. Lots of solid, common sense information. You need to make decisions about the size, about the style. By the way, that depends on your anatomy, on the shape of your ear canal, on your dexterity, whether you have earwax, whether you have lots of hair in your ear. By the time you sit down in my booth for a hearing test, I've already sized you up. Your ears, that is, okay? So, and then you need to decide what's inside the hearing aid, all these features. Features like t-coil, which, by the way, is listed as #1 on the Consumer Reports website. Directional microphones that help reduce the annoyance of background noise. Digital noise suppression. You know, virtually all hearing aids have noise suppression, whether you want regular batteries or rechargeable batteries. We're seeing more and more devices come on the market with rechargeable batteries. And then all these high-tech features, smartphone apps made for iPhone. And all of this stuff doesn't come natural to a lot of people. And that's why Tony is going to be set for life teaching people how to use their iPhone. Right, Tony? That's why they pay you the big bucks? Aha. Okay. And then special other features, and we're going to talk about those yet. You need to ask your provider, you know, is there a trial involved? How long can I keep the hearing aids? What portion is not refundable? Are the hearing aids open or locked? That means some hearing aids are locked, meaning only Avada can adjust your Avada hearing aids. And even though they're made by one company, as an audiologist, I cannot adjust the Avada hearing aids. So you want definitely open hearing aids. That means any audiologist can adjust them. Is the audiologist open to assistive devices? And does the provider offer hearing loop in the office or a list of hearing loops in the community? And again, you're dealing with somebody, you're going to be dealing with that person for a long time. So, on average, there's 2 groups of people about hearing aids. There are people who are very pleased. Their hearing aids made life better. They're more confident. They received lots of training. They feel okay about their hearing aids. They're doing generally quite well. And then there's a group that is disappointed. They don't work in all situations, right? They're somewhat embarrassed by wearing hearing aids, and sometimes it's not just hearing aids. People don't want to wear glasses. And some people complain that there wasn't a lot of training or aftercare. But in a nutshell, when you're going to look for hearing aids, you want to shop for the right provider, not for the right hearing aid. Every brand has hearing aids in different levels of technology. And again, check this website because they don't only rate hearing aids, they also rate providers. You want a provider who offers multiple brand devices, so not just Phonak or not just Avada or only Beltone hearing aids. Always bring a second set of ears to your appointments. You gotta give it time. You know, Rome wasn't built in one day. You need time to adjust to hearing aids, and you need lots of recommendations in writing. And I know people think that audiologists are trying to upsell when they start talking about accessories. And I'm here to tell you that some of these accessories are worth the money. Okay, so we'll talk about that. That's on page 4 of your handout on how to buy a hearing aid. So you don't have to remember a lot of things I say. It's right in the handout. And then, depending on how techy you are, there's great blogs, Facebook groups for people with hearing loss and cochlear implants. I mean, the sky's the limit on the internet. And you need to ask questions. So this handout is the one handout I didn't bring, but I'm happy to share it with Tony, and Tony can maybe put it on her website. But there's only 3 ways. Only 3 ways that when you have trouble hearing someone, that you can you get a chance at understanding them better. The first one is speak slower. I'm sorry. I'm trying to cram in so much stuff here. Speak slower. That's a good one. Ask the person to speak louder. Okay? Ask the person to come closer, because every time I get closer, you know, my voice right here is about 100 decibels right at his ear. Okay? And the third one is to use assistive technology. Those are your 3 options. Now, unless you're wearing 10-year-old, really old hearing aids that are not appropriately fit for your hearing loss. So, you know, I have a handout on this. I didn't bring that either. I'm happy to share it. But basically, if you need to hear better, besides asking people to speak louder, slower, and come closer, you need to use assistive technology, a remote microphone, or you need to use an assistive system in a public venue. So I'm finally getting to my point about assistive technology. And that's because hearing aids don't give you normal hearing. And I shouldn't have shown this slide. I should have just asked, on average, how far do you think hearing aids work? You read my slide, right? On average. I'm looking at you because, you know. How far away, how effective are hearing aids? It depends. 8 to 7 feet. As a rule, stick out your hand. I call this the effective hearing range. 2 arms lengths. Now, for loud-spoken people, you can maybe add an arm. But for those really cute, high-pitched, soft people, you know, I'm just going to have to come closer. So hearing aids really effective range about 6 feet. It depends, some a little further, some a little closer. Hearing aids only correct half of the loss of hearing, and in large public places, regardless of the technology you have in your ear, they make all sounds louder. And that's why it's so difficult to pick out the words from the background noise. And that's why you need assistive technology. So, and there's 2 different kinds of assistive technology. Stuff that you can use for yourself, one-on-one, TV, wife, in the car, that kind of thing, or in public. I told you I was going to cover a lot of stuff, so don't, you know, you don't have to remember all of this. But personal technology is very helpful. If you are here saying, you know, I got these new hearing aids and I still can't hear TV, you need to talk to your audiologist about a TV transmitter. And I think I saw somebody. You're wearing one of those devices around your neck. Yes. Do you use it for television, sir? How does that work for you? Pardon? How does that work for you? Works very well. Works very well for television. Yeah. Am I going over time? Am I good? Okay. For TV, there's special TV links. For conversation and noise, there are things called remote microphones, and they clip on clothing. It's kind of hard to see. Her face is obliterated, but it's right there. And there are remote controls, because you know it's sometimes hard to find those little buttons on hearing aids. You have one. Excellent. Now, I mentioned earlier about handheld solutions. If you don't wear a hearing aid and cost is a huge issue, these may be some solutions for you to hear better one-on-one in the car, but you're going to be tethered with a wire. That's just the way it is at the moment. These devices, there are different brands, Widex, Resound, Phonak. Those are little microphones, and they generally add anywhere between $200 and this one up to $450, but it's meant for meeting rooms, for professional use. They can work like a charm. I can't make you hear perfectly, but I can definitely make you hear better in the car, for example. So generally used for one-on-one or conversation with one or two people. Then I have some solutions for television. Who has trouble hearing TV? I mean, who can understand what they're saying on Downton Abbey, right? I can't. So first thing I do, I turn on the captions. I flew Delta, and Delta Airlines offers captions on their little TV screens in the chairs. Woohoo! You know, because it's hard to hear in the airplane when there's a lot of noise. So if you've never turned on the captions, I highly recommend them. They're called subtitles. If you rent videos, you can turn the subtitles on as well. If you own surround sound, turn it off. And that's because hearing aids don't like, you know, surround sound involves 4 speakers, 2 in the front, 2 in the back, and a subwoofer. These back speakers really wreak havoc with your microphones on your hearing aids. So you may want to try turning surround sound off and only have the speech come through the center speaker. And adjust the TV settings. And I know that involves going into scary screens on your TV, but that's life. Ask your granddaughter or your grandson. But frequently, there's like a little graphic equalizer. You can push up the high frequencies to improve the clarity. And in a lot of TVs, they're sold with a lot of bass because it sounds good in the store. It does not sound good at home. So you really need to work a little bit for your TV. Then every brand hearing aid comes with its own TV transmitter. I have news for you. In the next 5 years, all TV sets will come built in with the transmitter chip, so that when you get hearing aids, the hearing aids will automatically search for that sound from the TV. But it means A, new hearing aids, and B, a new TV. You know, it never ends. But that's basically what's coming down the pipe at the moment. But these streaming devices can be lifesavers or marriage savers. You know, I don't know. Am I saying that right? But I mean, you know, if you're not being chased out of the house because the TV is too loud. And then, anybody use a sound bar? You like it? And you lose closed captions as well. The sound bars tend to throw the sound into the room as opposed to the crappy speakers on the side of the TV screen. And Consumer Reports rate sound bars. So you can go to the website and use these sound bars. This is the little article. If you think you're the only one who has trouble hearing TV, you're wrong. Consumer Reports devoted a whole web page on it, okay? And I'm happy to send you the link to that article. And then, and this is a little wireless transmitter that you can take to your room and use, and this is an app. We've just started using that app at home. It's free. It's called Tunity, X-Tunity, and you can scan your TV program and then it'll send the audio to your phone and your phone can send it to your hearing aids. Last night I couldn't make it work very well, I'll admit it, but I'm still learning. But this is, you know, you can't look a gift horse in the mouth, but it would bring the sound closer to you, or you can watch TV with your phone without having to disturb your wife or your spouse next to you. There's a couple of TV devices that you can purchase. That's certainly something that you could be talking about. And then this is a home hearing loop. So this room has a hearing loop installed. How many of you are using your t-coil in the hearing loop here today? Okay. You can have that kind of system also installed in your house, or you can do a self-installation, and cost is generally under $300, $350. And how it works is you either install the wire in your house, or you install a wire with a pillow that you sit on. Here's the loop driver. Here's the hearing aid set to t-coil. Here's the wire. And the sound input from the TV goes to the loop driver. It's pretty slick and low cost, and you can sit in that TV loop for hours and it won't drain your batteries. I'm going to skip over this one. Now, yes, am I running out of time? Okay.
We really need to get into the hearing loops.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Okay. So, the law in this country is written to give people with disabilities better access, whether you're in a wheelchair, whether you're blind, right? Whether you need a ramp or an elevator or an escalator. Well, in the law is written a requirement for hearing access. And that hearing access comes in 3 forms. It either comes in the form of a system that requires you to pick up a listening device. So when you go to the theater, you pick up a device with a headset. But what do you do if you're very hard of hearing? Or what do you do when you wear a cochlear implant? These devices don't work very well. And for that reason, we are huge advocates of hearing loops. And that's because the hearing loop system is a universal system which allows you to go from my church to this meeting room to a theater in Milwaukee, and every time activate the t-coil in your hearing aid. And of course they're preferred by users. So how the hearing loop does its magic, you know, is that the sound from the microphone, I'm speaking into a microphone, is sent to the hearing loop. Generally, the loop is installed around or underneath the seated area. When you hear the sound just from the microphone, there won't be any background noise because my voice is speaking very, very closely into that microphone. And the t-coil in the hearing aid is picking up the sound. Now, t-coils have been around for 50 years. So they're nothing new. You need a microphone, you need the loop, and you need a t-coil. How do you know if you have a t-coil in your hearing aid? Well, there's a good chance your hearing aid has a t-coil if there's a button on it. Right there, and right there, okay? If you don't wear hearing aids, I have a solution for you. Anybody use an iPhone? Cool. Any of you have an iPhone and don't wear hearing aids? These earphones transform your iPhone into a loop listening device. It is absolutely super cool, and I have a recording that I'm going to make you listen to in a moment. Now, if you don't wear hearing aids and you don't own an iPhone, generally places offer loop listening devices like you offer, the headphones that have gone around in the room here. So, how do you know if your hearing aids have a t-coil? You need to ask your audiologist. And if you are here and you don't know if your hearing aids have t-coils, I brought a handout for you. It's a form to take to your audiologist and encourage your audiologist to activate the t-coil and program the t-coil. So I'm going to give you a tip. How many of you don't know if you have a t-coil in your hearing aid? Okay. Here's what you do. You go to your audiologist and you say, I want you to turn on my t-coil. And then you shut up. And you wait for the audiologist to look at your hearing aids, look in the computer, because sometimes you have to look in the computer to see if there's a t-coil in the hearing aid. And you wait until the audiologist tells you, you have one, let me turn it on for you. Or, you know what's coming, right? No, you don't have a t-coil. If your audiologist, you want, and this is, I know there's an audiologist in the room who I suspect tells everybody about t-coils, so I can say this. But you want your audiologist or your provider to feel a little uncomfortable. Because if she feels uncomfortable with you asking to have your t-coil activated and she didn't put one in your hearing aid and she never discussed it, or he never discussed it with you, trust me, you asking for a t-coil will remind him that he ought to be talking about this every time somebody comes in to buy hearing aids. It's the reason why consumers are trying to pass legislation to make t-coil counseling mandatory. I mean, if you buy a car and you tell the car dealer, oh, I never drive at night. I don't need headlights. Right? But what if it gets dark? I live in Wisconsin. We have tornadoes, folks, at 2 in the afternoon, and it gets really dark. So then you're going to be really happy you have headlights on your car. So that t-coil is not meant for every day, but it may be your church, it may be the theater, it may be the wedding of your granddaughter or a funeral of a dear friend. And to be able to turn that t-coil on is important. So that little form talks about t-coils, how to activate the t-coils, and how to program t-coils for audiologists. It's an educational tool. So this is the universal logo, and if I could just get on my soapbox for a minute. Oh, there it is. Shows you how unobservant I was. See the hearing loop logo? Personally, I prefer that it's hung on the wall so that it's there permanently, because if you're not, is the loop always on?
The loop is always on, and there is a sign on the door here.
Cool.
That's my sign that I take with me when I do presentations and other places. So that's my portable sign.
Got it. But I push for appropriate signage, because I'll tell you one story. Went to a funeral of a client who was 103. You know, when your clients have been with you for 25 years, you go to funerals. So I go into the church, and I'm seeing half a dozen of my clients. I come out of the church, and I start talking to Bob, and Bob goes, wait. I got to turn my t-coil off. And I'm thinking, whoo-hoo, Bob is using his t-coil. It's his church. He knows about the loop. Then I run into Hope. And Hope turned 100 last month. And she says to me, I wore my old hearing aids. They're bigger. They have t-coils because I knew they had a loop in this church. Wasn't that a nice service? I heard every word. And then I run into Janice, who says, that was a waste of time. I didn't hear a word. Jan also turned 100 last month. Okay? And she saw on my face that, Jan, there's a loop here. No signage, nothing in the bulletin, no announcement by the minister, and I didn't feel like I should be going around the church going, turn on your t-coil, but now I wished I had, right? So signage is important. I'm going to skip over these sound recordings. I'll play a recording in just a moment. So in Wisconsin, I've been very vocal about this, and the good news is we have hundreds of places with hearing loops. So if you come to Wisconsin, theaters, funeral homes, retirement community centers, this was the first large performing arts center in the country with a hearing loop. But loops also work at pharmacy counters or checkouts. Now, for you technical people in the room, you're probably going, where's the microphone? Because you know you need a microphone, right? That sound has to go into the mic to your hearing aid. There's the mic. And when you switch your hearing aid to t-coil, frequently it shuts a lot of the background noise off. So it makes it a lot easier to hear that person on the other side. This is the loop, and it creates kind of a bubble. The bubble only extends 2.5 feet. So you can have a loop here, and you can have a loop at the next counter, and they wouldn't interfere with each other. Here's a library desk in Wisconsin, and there's the microphone. The librarian is hard of hearing. And she turns the microphone around and points it at her patrons so that she can hear better. She thought that was pretty cool. Now, this is my church, St. Raphael's, large Catholic church. And I did a survey in the Fox Valley into hearing loop benefits. There are very few studies that verify how well hearing loops work. And I want to just draw your attention. This person said, I've used hearing aids in the loop. Yep. I used them at St. Raph. That's my church. Out of the loop, on a scale from 1 to 10, I heard a 2, where 1 means I heard nothing. So a 2 ain't so hot, all right? Out of the loop. And would everybody just please look at the circle in the loop? They could hear a 9. I made a copy of that card, and I slipped it under Father Doug's door. Like, Father Doug, you got to see this, The benefits of loops, especially in houses of worship and in large meeting rooms, are just tremendous. So, my efforts in Wisconsin have resulted in a lot of loops for a variety of reasons. Number one, lots of audiologists in Wisconsin promote t-coils and hearing loops. So I have a handout for you to take to your audiologist. It's this orange handout. Looks like this. And it's written by audiologists for audiologists why they ought to get involved with hearing loops. So if your audiologist is not in the room, I'd like you to pick one up, either mail it to your audiologist or hand carry it to your audiologist, why they should promote hearing loops. And then I brought, if you belong to a church, we have copies of this article. And I brought a progress report of the hearing loop movement around the United States. And inside that article is a letter for your audiologist.
So in other words, we're really working hard at making audiologists aware that they need to get involved. And this, you can put your name underneath it. You can say, I attended a fabulous meeting about telecoils and hearing loops. That's a good handout for you to take with you. Read the handout and then share it with your audiologist. This is the little card that Tony has been passing around to take to your audiologist. This is the article of an psychology professor who pays my outreach. So he paid for me to come here today to give this lecture. And then I also have these hearing loop cards. I hope I brought enough. You put them in your purse or in your wallet. And the next time you attend a lecture or you attend a funeral or you're at a wedding and you can't hear, then you put this card in the collection box or you give it to the minister. It gives you permission to complain. You know, how often have you been to places where you didn't hear well? You know what? She needs a dozen. Do I hear anybody needing more? But you know what? If you don't speak up, no one, you see, when somebody is sitting outside in a wheelchair because there's a step and they can't get into the room, everybody can see that person sitting there. But people who have hearing loss... I have asked the pastor. 1 ear and out the other. Okay, well, we have handouts. We're just about at the end here.
Yeah, hearing loops don't just happen. You have to ask.
And repeat, and it helps to team up with others. And let me give you a secret. If you donate to your church, if you earmark your donations, enough of that. You know, so you pay $100 every month. I mean, I'm making this up, but within a year, that's $1,000. That's real money. And you may know 2 or 3 other people. That's how my patients did it. In fact, some of my patients started going to other churches. Ooh, that really worked. You know, so there's in Oshkosh over 60 places that have loops.
In preparation for this meeting, I visited Church of Cross who has a hearing loop. They have practically no signage. So I'm working with them to get signage. Geneva Presbyterian Church has no signage. I met with the pastor there. I went to St. Nicholas. How many people go to St. Nicholas? Okay, please make an appointment. Let me go with you. Let me go with you because... I stopped going to St. Nicholas. I'm sorry? I stopped going to St. Nicholas. Because you can't hear. Okay, well, I understand that.
I have other handouts that I didn't bring. So I will email those to you. Okay. And because frequently there's strength in numbers and really the ministers don't fully comprehend why people can't hear.
I sent invitations to 23 churches in Orange County, all close to us. Is anybody here representing a church coming to learn about loops? No. Oh. Okay, so we have one over there. Okay.
Okay, so let me play you a recording that I just made 3 weeks ago at a senior expo in a large convention hall in Oshkosh that has a hearing loop. The convention was going on and they had a fabulous speaker from the Healthy Aging Institute, and this is what she sounded like.
Of what aging was going to be, and she was dreading getting older. Well, what's the only way to...
I mean, is this amazing or what? You can't hear a thing, right? Now, I made a recording with those loop buds and my iPhone in the loop.
Against one's future self. Think about that. Prejudice against our future self. We're sitting there and our young people...
I mean, this is...
Of what aging was going to be.
So, there is a way to make a recording in your church out of the loop. See, people who have no hearing loss do not understand that those of you who wear hearing aids go through life wearing microphones on your ears. How many of you used to make home movies of your kiddos in the back of the school play? And how did they sound, sir? Crappy, right? And while you're making the movie, you think, ooh, this is going to sound pretty good. I like this. And you know why it sounded good to you while you were making the movie? Because you were hearing with your own 2 ears. And my ears are connected to my brain. So when you have good hearing, I can focus. I can get rid of the background noise. I don't hear the fan running. I don't hear the feet shuffling. I'm just listening to my son on stage playing Abe Lincoln. He was the tallest kid in the class. What can I say? But then you take it home, and you are no longer hearing through your ears. You are hearing through the crappy microphone of your iPhone. That's how people with hearing aids hear. And there's plenty of recordings online to let you hear how people hear in and out of church. So actually, I'm at my last 2 slides. Am I good? And then I'll go to questions and answers. These are all kinds of books that talk about hearing, hearing loss, hearing technology. If you're a really techie guy, oh, this is the book for you. All right? It's written by an Irish guy, an Irish bloke, as he calls himself. But there's different books. Some are easier, some are funny, some are very serious. But those would be a good place to start. And then in closing, I'm sure I belabored the point long and hard that hearing loss is not innocuous. You want to treat it. You want to treat it sooner rather than later. Hearing aids do improve quality of life, but they have limitations. But there are workarounds, okay? And those you need to explore. The shortcomings of hearing aids can be overcome. You need to speak up for effective hearing access. It is your right under the ADA, okay? And you've got an ally in Tony right here. And I can't say enough about the Hearing Loss Association of America. So I think this is my last slide. Of course, healthy aging requires healthy hearing. That's my email address. I welcome emails. You're welcome to write me, refresh my memory that it was this lecture. If I can't answer it, I know all kinds of experts who can. So for, right now, I'll open it up for questions. And I'm going to have Tony walk around with a mic.
Thank you. Couple of questions. First one, what was that app you're talking about in the phone to use as a...
For TV, it's called Tunity.
No, for meetings and stuff.
Actually, there's probably 20 different apps.
Oh, okay.
And there is a website that lists them, and it's at the top of my head, it's not coming up, but you can literally use your phone as a handheld amplifier. So I will make sure...
You can email me and I'll get you.
Email this
Okay,
woman.
Tony, thank you.
Okay, and I'm going to...
Remind me what I'm going to get you. Okay, question.
We're all getting older.
Could you help with some resources for our friends and family who have perfect ears and do not understand?
The handout that I listed there, the 10 things that people with hearing loss wishes our friends knew, is a good one to start, and I'm happy to email it to you, but I'm also going to email it to Tony, so if you email me, because that is a frustrating thing, right? You feel like you've got to be the broken record. Yes.
Okay, at my regular meetings, I have something called a tip card. It's a communications tip card. On one side, it's the recommendations for person with hearing loss. On the other side is recommendations for hearing people trying to talk and communicate with people with
Yeah.
hearing loss.
And it's being very upfront and matter-of-fact about it. I have trouble hearing. Shouting does not help. I need you to speak clearly. Now, the thing about speaking clearly versus speaking slower is that when you ask people to speak slower, they'll do it for 2 seconds and then they stop. But you can sometimes, not always, encourage people to enunciate clearly. If you go to a lecture and you have trouble hearing the presenter, for example, have you been to meetings where people do this with the microphone? Here's what you do. It's not mine. It came from somebody else. You raise your hand and you say, I need you to speak into the microphone, or about a fist away. And you don't want it to pop, you know, so you have to kind of... And then when they start doing this again, you raise your hand again. I mean, hey, if you don't, who's going to do it, right? So you raise your hand again. Trust me, the third time you raise your hand, the person will do this right away. I was at a meeting in Madison 2 days ago, and somebody just gently went and basically was telling me to hold the microphone closer to my mouth. So it happens to me too. But I appreciated the reminder, right? And if you have trouble hearing, trust me, there's other people who have trouble hearing also. Okay.
Okay, thank you. I purposely did not wear my hearing aids in the room today. Because the hearing aids I'm trying right now do not have a T-coil, but they have the feature for the Bluetooth for answering the phone, which is not really very good. But I heard every word you said. But am I speaking too loud?
No.
But most of all, in auditoriums, I cannot hear, even with the microphone.
No.
But my question really is, I have an Android. Is it worth it for me to switch to an iPhone?
Ooh. I think the Android hearing aids that are coming out are going to alleviate that issue, perhaps with linking or pairing. But what I'm far more concerned about is that you are getting ready to try or purchase hearing aids that have Bluetooth but don't have t-coil. I write a blog on Loop, Wisconsin, WordPress, called Loop, Wisconsin, all one word, no space. And I write about Bluetooth and t-coils. And I'm a firm believer you need both. You need your audiologist to tell your audiologist, I want both. I don't want just Bluetooth, I don't just want the t-coil, I want both. And there's plenty of hearing aids that offer both. Yeah. And what she's saying is that even if she tries different hearing aids, she still has trouble hearing. Let's talk afterwards.
My biggest problem is on the telephone, particularly if I'm calling someone with the, I'm calling someone that has the same provider that I have.
And you still have trouble hearing.
No, that's the worst.
Okay. Now, a couple of things about cell phone use. Do you have telecoils in your hearing aids?
I think so.
Because the telecoil was originally designed to be used on the telephone. And there are still plenty of cell phones that have a strong enough signal that you can switch to t-coil and have the sound from the phone go right into your hearing aid. That's one solution. Number two, I love speaker phones. Because if you turn the speakerphone on, you hear in 2 ears instead of one. That's an advantage.
When you're purchasing, I usually do a program on how to buy a cell phone for people with hearing loss. The one thing you should know is when you're buying one, look on the label.
Yes.
Where it says MT, there's a rating, an MT rating. M is for microphone, T is for telecoil. If you have a telecoil and want to use it, you want to get the best rating. So 4, the number 4 is the highest rating. So look for your T-coil ratings. Any other questions? Okay, here we go.
I'll stick around.
I get my hearing aid through the VA. My question is, I don't think that it has a t-coil in it. Now, is there any way that I can get one put in?
Okay, couple of things. If the hearing aid is behind the ear, no, we can't add a t-coil. If your hearing aid is in the ear, sometimes it can, but on a couple of make hearing aids, you can get what is called a streamer that has the t-coil in the remote around your neck. It's not a perfect solution, but it's usable. So I could look at your hearing aids and take a look whether the VA, lots of VA hearing aids have t-coils, so I'd be surprised.
I have a Roger pen. Does that have a t-coil in it?
No, it does not. The Roger pen is meant to be like a third ear, a third microphone that you can either put on a table, your TV. Are you using it for television? You don't have it on now, but have you used your Roger pen for TV?
If I use it when I go play bridge, and I play with the bridge club here in Laguna Woods, and they have the bidding boxes, and it's mostly visual.
Yeah. The Roger pen does require some practice and some techiness. Do you do sessions on the Roger pen, Tony?
I've had it for some time.
Okay. The Roger pen, the veterans qualify for these Roger pens. They work well, but they tend to add between $1,500 and $2,500 to the cost of your hearing aids. So I find that very few people purchase them privately. Oh.
Questions back here? Any questions? No? Okay.
Well, and I'll stick around. Tony, there's somebody in the back, and there, and then this gentleman, and...
I do have a hearing aid, but my main problem is I can't hear in the meetings.
You have what?
In the meetings, when I'm in the room, I can't hear clearly.
Do you have the Roger pen?
No, I don't.
No?
No,
Okay.
but what I'm thinking, maybe I don't need another hearing aid, but look for that loop thing in the iPhone and not change my hearing aids.
In effect, how many people, this is a more involved question than just coming up with a really quick solution. It depends on how large the room is, how many people are in the room.
I would say about 30 people in the room.
Yeah.
And the room is about 30 feet by 50 feet.
Yeah. Even that will not do it because my iPhone only works 2-3 feet away. But there is a conference microphone on the Pocket Talker. So if you email me, I'll send you that information. It's called a conference microphone. And we can talk about that. Do you have telecoils in your hearing aids? We need to look at his hearing aids too. Okay.
A question about the loops, and maybe a comment too. I go to Jazz Vespers over at the Geneva Presbyterian Church, and I noticed they do have signage on some of the seats at the end of the rows. Does it make a difference where in a looped room you sit?
Ideally, it should not. However, if you are sitting like right above the wire, there can be a variation, because what the wire is doing is creating a changing magnetic field. There's current going through the wire. And that means that the magnetic field is rotating around the wire, and that the field above the wire will be horizontal. I mean, I'm getting a little techie, but it can happen that if you are sitting smack dab above the wire, the signal is quieter.
So it might be worth trying to move around in a looped room?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
The other comment is that it seems that the Achilles heel of a loop system is the microphone into which the input comes.
Yes.
And I noticed that in these jazz vespers, that the music is better if I turn off the loop, which is okay when the minister is talking and you're getting a single kind of input.
Yeah.
But it doesn't give as good quality to the music because the music's being made in different places. So
Correct.
I go back and forth, so it may be that in loop systems, depending upon the kind of input that you're getting, you may have to change settings.
And you raised some really good points. Some telephone apps now allow the user to vary the microphone and t-coil mix in the app itself. So I don't know what brand you're using, but that might be a solution. And you're absolutely right. The reason loops work so well in traditional churches is that generally they use microphones, they use them well, they're close mic'd, and there's a sound system. If you go to a theater and all they have is one little microphone hanging above the stage, it isn't going to be a whole lot better than you sitting in the audience with your hearing aids. I have articles about that if you're interested, and I'm happy to share with you. Yeah. So I'm going to stick around for a few more questions. I really appreciate your attention. I'm not going away, but I'm happy to just answer questions face to face.
Okay, if you have a loop device, thank you. If you have a hearing, a loop listener, please turn that in before you leave. And Juliëtte, this isn't very much, but this is for you to have coffee on the road.
Thank you. How did you know? I need lots of that.
So, and I wish you safe travels back to Wisconsin. So if you have remaining questions, please feel free to email me. I left my cards at the table. You can pick one up on the way out. And also, I have a lot of information on our website, hearingwellclub.com, so please check it out. Thank you. Thank you for coming.